Hey everybody, this is Zach with 8020 Media, here today with a video on the most common BMW M52 engine problems. The BMW M52 inline-six was produced from 1994 up until 2000 and included a number of different variants ranging from 2 liters up to 2.8 liters, and the M52 also went through a notable technical update in 1998, which included a couple significant changes, including the move to double VANOS or dual VANOS, as well as switching from Nikasil to steel cylinder liners due to some issues there. All that said, the M52 does have one thing going for it, and that is its very simplistic design. A lot of engines, especially a lot of BMW engines, in the 1980s and 1990s were very reliable just due to their simplistic design being very easy to work on, so the M52 does have that going for itself. However, the M52 also did come at a time where BMW was starting to test out some of these newer technologies, like moving to aluminum cylinder blocks for a lighter weight design, as well as double VANOS, and so those did tie into a few of the issues with the BMW M52. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and discuss some of the most common BMW M52 engine problems. Number one on the list, we have cooling system issues. Cooling system problems and BMW are nearly synonymous. A lot of people know and understand that BMW has always had some issues with their cooling systems, and they've never been the most reliable cooling systems, and that was especially true for a lot of these BMW engines in 1980s and 1990s, and the M52 is no exception here. A few of the most common issues with the cooling system were the expansion tank, the radiator, as well as the water pump. However, the entire cooling system is prone to running into issues at different points in time, so some other things to be on the lookout for include the thermostat, the coolant hoses, the cooling fan. Really, the cooling system as a whole is something to be aware of if you are looking to pick up a BMW M52 powered vehicle. So if you're in the market for one of these, especially considering the age of them nowadays, we are talking about a roughly 25 to 30-year-old engine here. So again, if you're looking to pick one of these up and it hasn't had any cooling system work done to it in the recent years, then that's certainly something to consider, is just doing a full cooling system overhaul. Moving on to the second most common issue, we have VANOS problems, and this is especially true for the 1998 Plus models, which received the technical update. The technical update had added double or dual VANOS to the BMW M52. Now, this was great technology for performance, but ultimately, since this was new technology at the time and something BMW was just starting to test out with the M52, it did have some design flaws and kinks to work out, and a lot of the times that can be natural for brand new designs. There are always going to be small flaws and kinks that need to be worked out. So a couple reliability issues were known with the VANOS system, and unfortunately on some of these older BMW engines, the VANOS system and units are a little more complicated than on the newer engines, so it can be a slightly more expensive, complicated repair. A lot of modern BMW engines really only have problems with the VANOS solenoids, which are cheap and easy to fix, but a lot of the times you have to address the entire VANOS unit on these old engines, including the M52, something to be aware of, but still a relatively minor issue in the grand scheme. And to be totally fair, it's not something that I would hold completely against the technical update. Again, it was just a new technology that still had some kinks and design flaws that had to be worked out. Moving on to our third and final common problem for the BMW M52, we have Nikasil damage and essentially complete engine block failure. With the BMW M52, there were actually two different block designs. Here in the United States, we received cast iron engine blocks, so basically a much stronger block than the aluminum versions. In these other markets that received aluminum engine blocks, BMW actually opted for a Nikasil cylinder liners on the aluminum block M52s in foreign markets. Now, the problem at the time was a lot of markets had very high sulfur content in their fuels. Ultimately, sulfur is very corrosive on Nikasil specifically, and so that led to issues with having these high sulfur fuels touching and coming into contact with the Nikasil cylinder liners, and ultimately necessitated complete engine block replacement. So again, this was something that primarily affected M52s in foreign markets. Ultimately in 1998, when BMW did the technical update, they did address that and switched from the Nikasil to steel cylinder liners. Fortunately, looking at it nowadays, even if you buy an M52 that somehow still has those Nikasil cylinder liners, If it's still operating and running well today, it shouldn't be an issue since we really don't have high sulfur content in our fuels anymore. And so this is a non-issue nowadays. It was just unfortunate timing. So a bit of an oversight and design flaw there by BMW that led to some serious problems. So that wraps up the most common problems with the BMW M52 inline-six engine. So circling back, summarizing it, and talking about M52 reliability overall, the M52 is a reliable engine. It has a relatively simplistic design overall. However, when the M52 came out, BMW was starting to experiment with some of those newer technologies like double VANOS, as well as lighter weight engine design and switching to the aluminum block, both of which caused some issues with the M52, and that's just part of the nature of progress and building better engines, is that some of those technical updates had to happen and BMW had to start testing newer technologies. So whether or not you hold that against the M52 is kind of each to their own. I do think to some extent that it is fair, and pretty much any engine, any manufacturer testing out and trying new technologies always has some of those early flaws and kinks to work out, and so just the nature of owning an M52, especially in those earlier days. Outside of that, the M52, the cooling system is really going to be the main weak point, and then on top of that, we are talking about a 25 to 30-year-old engine, so any rubber or rubber-like materials, gaskets, O-rings, seals, hoses, etc. are just normal wear and tear items, and on any 25, 30-year-old car, they're going to require some extra TLC and a little bit of extra maintenance along the way. Anyway, guys, that wraps up our video on the most common BMW M52 engine problems. If you appreciated the content, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more in the future. Thanks, everybody.